3 Breeders' Cup races. Goldacova 3 years in a row in the mile. A horse like Beholder, 3 Breeders' Cup races with the juvenile fillies, and then the distaff a few times. But 3 Breeders' Cup turfs potentially for Rebels Romance. He is such a gladiator. If you have the opportunity to take a close look at him at Del Mar, get down there. You won't want to miss the opportunity to see this horse compete up close and personal. Todd, he's such a great traveler. He's so consistent in his form. I know he's very special for Charlie Appleby. He mentioned that he doesn't get overly emotional with these races, but if Rebels Romance is to do it, you might see a few tears out there.
The Breeders' Cup is 2 championship days of racing. Future Stars Friday and then Championship Saturday. Futures Star Friday is where we are going to start. Hold on a second, though. Flip a coin here. Heads or tails?
Heads.
Okay, it's tails. I'm going to go first. Okay, talking about the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint. There will be 12 that will be able to go 5 furlongs on the turf. And Outfielder is a horse who does have first preference in the juvenile turf, so that may open up a spot for someone else on the outside here. 22 horses in all were entered into the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint, and you have your challenge winner, Intricate Spirit. You'll be hearing a lot about Lenny Lou on Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup, because after all, we've got inside word there. That one trained by Patrick Biancone, so Andy Biancone will be giving us all the latest with Lenny Lou. But it will be the first of 5 championship races on Future Stars Friday, going as the 6th race, post time 2:45 Pacific time, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint.
Todd, you mentioned 22 horses pre-entered in that race. In the Juvenile Turf Sprint, 12 horses can go postward at the 5 furlong distance. And you're going to see this as a theme throughout the show. Certainly when it comes to the Breeders' Cup, everybody wants to be there. Horses want to enter, want to compete. And so we have races that end up oversubscribed. And we wanted to take you through that process. What happens at the Breeders' Cup if a race is oversubscribed? So we'll start with the knowledge of how many horses can run in each race. As I mentioned, 14 starters allowed in each of the races, with the exception of the Turf Sprint and the Juvenile Turf Sprint. Those 2 races will run with 12 starters. To assemble the gate, we go to the field selection system, and this is a 3-step process. First of all, the Breeders' Cup Challenge races, those win and you're in event winners. Secondly, the graded stakes point system. And third, a panel of racing experts. So let's talk about the point system. I think we know what the win and you're in events are by this point. Points are assigned to horses who finish 1st, 2nd, or 3rd for graded stakes races in the U.S. or Canada from January 1st through the pre-entry deadline. That was October the 20th. It's noteworthy here that graded stakes points are only counted if you're trying to get into a dirt race from dirt qualifiers. Same to be said for turf races. However, for 2-year-olds, all graded stakes points are counted. The win and you're in horses and the top performers in graded stakes races automatically become half the field. The remaining horses who will gain entry are based on the judgment from the panel of experts, and if the number of challenge winners exceeds half the field, those winners take priority over horses selected by the panel. You're going to see some oversubscribed races here. That's how they determine who is in the field.
And we're also going to see some horses who want to win in your in race, but not able to make it to the Breeders' Cup.
Correct. And maybe they'll have longer, goals down the line into next year that we'll look forward to them kind of falling on that foundation that they set in those win and you're in events. Let's turn the page to the NetJets Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. Pre-entries for this 2-year-old filly event at the mile and the 16th distance. $2 million on the line. Bottle of Rouge for the Harry Styles fans. Explora, the Oak Leaf winner.
I'm one of them.
Iron Orchard, I'm raising my hand too. La Vie Lumiere, Lawali, meaning Percy's Bar, a sentimental favorite there in Kentucky. Super Corridora, and Tommy Joe, the Darley Alcibiades winner. Those are your pre-entries for the juvenile fillies.
Okay, let's talk about the John Deere Breeders' Cup. Well, let's take a look at the FanDuel Breeders' Cup Juvenile. And as we take a look at the field here, Bob Baffert is obviously the focus with Citizen Bull winning last year, but Bob Baffert leads all the way around. 6 wins in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. He is absolutely dominated, especially out here on the West Coast. So as we take a look at the FanDuel Breeders' Cup Juvenile presented by the TAA, obviously Brandt is going to get a lot of attention for trainer Bob Baffert, but coming in, Ted Nafi is the leader of this division. Spendthrift with that opportunity to take both big races on Future Stars Friday. the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, and then the FanDuel Breeders' Cup Juvenile. They have Tommy Joe in the Fillies and Ted Nafi, who certainly is the one to beat in this, the FanDuel Breeders' Cup Juvenile.
Looking forward to seeing what he can do. Ted Nafi, of course, has that experience around 2 turns. That's going to be key. Your winner of the Claiborne Breeders' Futurity. Intrepido supplemented to this race, Todd. He wasn't originally Breeders' Cup nominated, so a big swing for them to go ahead and put him into this race.
Going back to the Juvenile Fillies Turf presented by John Deere. As Christina mentioned, 14 can go in here. This has been pre-entered, a total of 16, and you have 3 challenge winners in here: Ground Support, Imagination, the Lady, as well as Precise. Now, do note, True Love has first preference in the Juvenile Turf Sprint, so that'll present an opportunity to someone on the outside here, like the 15 and 16 La Ville Lumiere, as well as Celebrity Warrior. But taking a look at this field, horses from Brad Cox, as well as Mark Casse, and Aidan O'Brien is back with more.
He is indeed, and he's currently tied atop the list as far as winners of Breeders' Cup races, with trainers tied with the late, great D. Wayne Lucas, the coach, quite a few others very, very close, nipping at his heels as well. You can see Aidan O'Brien tied with those 20 wins. Bob Baffert and Chad Brown tied with 19 apiece. Todd Pletcher, Bill Mott, the Hall of Famers in behind, and Charlie Appleby very quickly making up ground on the American-based horsemen. Brad Cox, Richard Mandela, the Mano Mandela. What a day, certainly contributing to his tally many years ago. We'll move ahead to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. This one at the 1 mile distance on the turf course, $1 million on the line. Let's take a look at the pre-entries. Ardesia, Argos, the challenge winner of the Summer Stakes up at Woodbine. Botas for Miguel Clement. Brussels, first preference to the Juvenile Turf Sprint. Gestad, Here's Johnny. I don't know if I said that one right. Here's Johnny. I'm looking forward to Larry Golmes saying that one. Hey, Nene, Humidity, Let's Be Frank, North Coast, Outfielder, second preference to the Juvenile Turf Sprint, Stark Contrast, Street Beast, Turf Star.
Well, the best part about the Breeders' Cup, for those who participate at the wagering windows, it's 2 of the best days in all of racing. So when you take a look at the wagering menu, it is there to produce for the players. Take a look at this on Friday. As you look through the wagering menu here, 10 races in all, and as we said, our first championship race will come up in race number 6, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint, and a pick 5 offered with those 5 championship races.
Quite a few pick 5s offered throughout the couple of days of championship racing. We'll kind of detail all of that here on FanDuel TV over the next couple of weeks. There will be a couple of wagers that you can jump from day 1 to day 2 with the Distack Classic Double. Let's take a look in terms of the Breeders' Cup. What's the difference between Future Stars Friday and Championship Saturday? We just took you through those races for Future Stars Friday and the pre-entered horses for them. 14 Breeders' Cup races in all. 5 of the 14 races are run on Future Stars Friday, and they are all for 2-year-olds, the future stars of our game. And what's noteworthy here when you're just talking about 2-year-old racing in general, they race exclusively in their own age group. So from those 5 Breeders' Cup races, 3 are on the turf, 2 are on the dirt. And as you can see, there's only 1 Juvenile Turf Sprint, so you will have fillies and boys squaring off against each other for the most part in that race. This is the 2-year-old class that will turn 3 next year. So these are the fillies that you can look forward to in next year's Kentucky Oaks. And for the boys, these are the colts and geldings that will have their eyes on the Kentucky Derby in 2026. Now on to Championship Saturday. We'll bring you those pre-entries momentarily here. 9 of the 14 races run on Saturday. Age-wise, we're going to bump up. We are now at the age of 3-year-old and up for all of the races on Saturday. We'll start with the turf events. The Turf Sprint, run at 5 furlongs at Del Mar. The Turf, the longest Breeders' Cup race at the 1.5-mile distance. The Filly and Mare Turf, run at 1 3/8 at Del Mar, and the Flat Mile. Over to the dirt events, the Sprint, run at 6 furlongs on the dirt. The Dirt Mile, a 1-mile race, which is a 2-turn race at Del Mar. The Filly and Mare Sprint at 7 furlongs on the main track. The Distaff at 1 1/8 on the main. And then the Classic, the 1 1/4, a defining race, and certainly this year, even more so with this class.
The first of 9 championship races on Saturday will be race number 4 on the card. Post time at noon Pacific time. It is the PNC Bank Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. How about Holland Ice? She is one of 3 challenge winners in this race at Hope Road and Prame. But Holland Ice, an Arkansas bred, showing you that good horses can come from anywhere around the world. One of the better Arkansas breds we've seen in recent years. Holland Ice in here. Majestic Oops, important to note here. You have a total of 12 horses in the race. Majestic Oops has first preference in the distaff, but it is the PNC Bank Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint that will be the first of 9 championship races on Championship Saturday.
We'll move ahead with our pre-entries. We're going to step forward to the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. Remember, 12 horses can run in this one. 5 furlongs the distance for 3-year-olds and up, $1 million. On the line, AG Bullet, so close in this race last year, and her form has certainly held up. A challenge winner as designated there. Arizona Blaze, the Flying 5 winner. Bear River, another challenge winner. Bring the Band Home. Bucanero Fuerte, second preference to the mile. Governor Sam, Invincible Papa, Kadem, Motorious, Reef Runner. They met in the prep down at Del Mar this summer. She's quality and she's so spicy. Quite a few wanted to enter this race, so on the outside, not selected into the field, but listed in order of preference. Puro Magic, Yellow Card, No Balls, the winner back in 2023, None Hudson, Joe Shiesty, and Encanto.
Turning our attention now to the Cy Games Breeders' Cup Sprint. It'll be the 6th race on the card on Saturday, the 3rd championship race. And look who's back. Straight No Chaser trying to defend his title in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. Christina would know that very well because her husband, Dan, trains the defending championship in this race. And when it comes to repeating in the Breeders' Cup Sprint, Midnight Loot did it back-to-back years, 2007 to 2008. Roy H. following up 10 years later in 2017 and 2018. And then most recently, Elite Power 2022 and 2023. So if we get Straight No Chaser pulling this off, we'll have 4 consecutive years where it's 2 horses defending their title in the Cy Games Breeders' Cup Sprint. And as we take a look, 17 horses have been entered this year. Now, do note a couple of those horses who are listed in the body of the race, Copion and Tamara and Puro Magic. As you look at these horses, they have different first preferences. Copion has first preference in the Filly and Mare Sprint. Tamara has first preference in the Filly and Mare Sprint. And Puro Magic from Japan has first preference in the Turf Sprint. And you see your challenge winners that we got through this year with Imagination and horses like Lovesick Blues, who's a winner in the Grade 1 Bing Crosby at Del Mar. Pretty incredible story. A California bred who was formerly a $12,500 claimer. Now he'll be running for $2 million, 6 furlongs against the world's best in the Cy Games Breeders' Cup Sprint. Straight No Chaser back to win it again.
The ladies get their turn in the next race on the Saturday program, the Longines Breeders' Cup Distaff. And Torpedo Anna, the winner of this race last year, your horse of the year from last year, just recently retired. She will be celebrated this weekend at Keeneland as fans are invited to come meet her. And here is the class that will decide the Breeders' Cup Distaff at the 1.125 distance for 2025. Alice Verite back to the Breeders' Cup. She was here last year. Second preference to the Filly and Mare Turf for her. Argine, first preference to the mile. Clicquot, Dorth Vader, the Ogden Phipps winner. Dry Powder, second preference to the dirt mile for her. Jin Jin, your winner of the Spinster. Gunsong, Majestic Oops, second preference to the Filly and Mare Sprint. The 3-year-old filly Nitrogen, how good was she in the Spinster taking on older? Regaled, Sarawak Rim, another challenge winner. Scottish Lassie, Scylla, and Seismic Beauty, the Clement Hirsch winner.
On the map, on the map, on the map. Rebels Romance. We turn our attention now to the Longines Breeders' Cup Turf. And as we look at the map here, the Longines Breeders' Cup Turf will be conducted over 1.5 miles on the Jimmy Durante Turf Course at Del Mar. So they start just at the beginning of the backstretch there. It's a 3-turn race. And when you take a look at horses who have put on a show when it comes to winning 3 Breeders' Cup races. I think remarkable is Beholder because it was a Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies win and then 2 Distaff wins. And look at the time in between. Goldakova, as Christina mentioned at the top of the show, 3 consecutive years, took the Breeders' Cup Mile. That's been a race where we've had a lot of back-to-back champions in. But look at Rebels Romance, the 2022 Longines Breeders' Cup Turf, then obviously last year, not in 2023, but here in 2025. It just also speaks to the endurance Rebels Romance has had, racing at a high level for so long.
For so long and all over the world. In between some of those races, he had stops and victories in Dubai and Saudi and Germany. He's been everywhere, and he comes to the Breeders' Cup once more.
14 horses entered into the Longines Breeders' Cup Turf. It will go as the 8th race on Saturday, post time 2:41 Pacific time. And your Breeders' Cup Challenge winners in here. Gold Phoenix, he's a remarkable story, having won the Del Mar Handicap on the turf on Pacific Classic Day for the 4th consecutive year. He keeps going as an older horse. And then for Godolphin and Charlie Appleby, who's obviously had a lot of success at the Breeders' Cup, your challenge winner there, El Cordobez, but it'll be Rebels Romance who looms as one of the biggest favorites of the entire 2 days. And how about the story of Goliath? John Stewart of Resolute Racing is not afraid to back up his opinions with money. He had to be supplemented into this race for a huge figure. They have every confidence that this horse at the top of his game can be competitive, not only be competitive in the Longines Breeders' Cup Turf, but win it. And they're going to have to be because Rebels Romance is in phenomenal form, has already proven that this horse can take this race at Del Mar. What a renewal of the Longines Breeders' Cup Turf. Rebels Romance trying to win this race for a 3rd time.
Now on to the Longines Breeders' Cup Classic, and I'm going to steal your line. They will write books about the 2025
Yes,
Breeders' Cup Classic. You have to be there to watch this with us, and if you can be at Del Mar to see it up close and personal with your own eyes. A changing of the guard. 3-year-olds to win the Classic since 2000. Remember, Sierra Leone was just 3 years old last year, and what a photo it was to decide that race in 2020. Authentic won it on the heels of his Kentucky Derby. Arrogate, American Pharoah, Byron, Ravens Pass, Curlin, Tisnow. This 3-year-old class, we've talked about it since the beginning of the year. They are exceptional, and they have also incredibly maintained their form. They've been so consistent. They take on an older group of horses that came back at 4 to make this one of the most anticipated Breeders' Cup Classics in recent history. $7 million on the line, 1.25 miles is the distance. Here are the pre-entries. Antiquarian, your Jockey Club Gold Cup winner. Baeza, Contrary Thinking. Fierceness, the Pacific Classic winner. He loves Del Mar and just beaten in this race last year. Forever Young, back. He is a challenge winner. He just won his recent prep in Japan, and he will ship back to the United States once again. Journalism, the Preakness and Haskell winner, Jose Ortiz, now aboard Journalism and for the first time in the Classic. Locked, Mindframe, Nevada Beach, a challenge winner as well. Sierra Leone, the defending champ, and your Kentucky Derby and Belmont and Travers, a Jim Dandy winner, Sovereignty. I'm
going to say best Breeders' Cup Classic field since 1998. If you recall that year, Awesome Again won the race. He completed a perfect year, 6 for 6. The horse he beat, who was favored that year, was Skip Away. If you recall the previous year when he won the Breeders' Cup Classic in 97, he didn't get Horse of the Year. That went to the 2-year-old Favorite Trick. He lost in 98 to Awesome Again, but he won Horse of the Year. Awesome Again didn't get Horse of the Year after a perfect campaign. A lot of drama to play out in the Longines Breeders' Cup Classic. Normally, that would be the conclusion to the Breeders' Cup weekend. It is not. We get the treat to have 3 races after that, and one of them is one of our favorite races over the 2 championship days, talking about the FanDuel Breeders' Cup Mile. Charlie Appleby and Godolphin have had tons of success here, especially out in California. Take a look at this run. Space Blues in 2021. Modern Games, yeah, that was a different deal there. And then Master of the Seas in 2023, and they are back for more this year. Let's take a look at the pre-entries. A total of 15 horses were entered in here. Now, one of those horses, Bucanero Fuerte, his first preference is in the turf sprint, so that'll help me help out the connections with Gas Me Up on the outside here. But Johannes, he came so close last year. This is his Circuit California. He's only had a couple of starts this year, but he showed his return to form last time out at Santa Anita. He certainly is going to get a lot of play in here. Rhetorical will get a lot of attention in this race. Gary Barber, the owner, and Rhetorical has been phenomenal. The New York bred, what a story as well. Young Will Walden, the son of Elliott Walden, coming to the Breeders' Cup with Rhetorical, who is in the right form. So, you know, a race that normally you would look overseas and say, okay, the winner's going to come there. America is coming with a gauntlet of really good horses, and I didn't even mention Formidable Man there. You look at the locally based horses in California, Formidable Man, Johannes, and then you look at the New York bred Rhetorical, who we saw at Keeneland last time out. Excellent chance for America to get back on track in the FanDuel Breeders' Cup Mile. And that will be the 7th championship race on Saturday, going as the 10th race overall, post time at 4:05 Pacific time.
We'll keep it at the mile distance, but this time switch back to the main track for the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. 3-year-olds and up with $1 million on the line. Here's a look at the pre-entered runners. Total 13 of them pre-entered in this race. Chancer McPatrick, Citizen Bull, your juvenile winner from last year, Dr. Venkman, first preference to the sprint at 6 furlongs. Dry Powder, first preference for her in the distaff. The defending champion, Full Serrano, lightly raced this year. He came back well at Del Mar this summer. Maybe a little short in that last start, but looking to rebound. Goal-oriented, Mystic Dan, your Kentucky Derby winner from a few years ago. Nysos, Patriot Spirit, first preference to the sprint. Challenge winner, Touch of Destiny from Uruguay. Tumbarumba, White Abario, and Will Take It.
Okay, our final championship race. 14 championship races in overall, 5 on Friday and 9 on Saturday, will be the Maker's Mark Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf. Just a reminder that this will be a 1 3/8 on the turf, the Jimmy Durante turf course. So that's the route they'll be taking, starting on the backstretch. So a 3-turn race. And we have 18 horses pre-entered in here. Looking at our Challenge Series winners, we've got 5 of them in here. Beleza, La Kika, Mini Hawk, as well as Mission of Joy, and She Feels Pretty, who, you know, in America really dominated this division throughout the year. The question is, will she be as effective as a 1 3/8? There's no doubt she's going to get a lot of play in here. It should also be noted that Mini Hawk, one of your Challenge Series winners, who's in the body of the race on the entries, first preference is in the turf. So the Maker's Mark Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf, that'll be welcome news to horses on the outside like Alice Verite, Atsila, Cathedral, and Way to Be Marie. But looking at this field, Europe is certainly going to have a huge advantage here, and the United States putting their hopes behind She Feels Pretty. And it will be 18 horses entered for the Maker's Mark Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf. That is Championship Saturday. On the wagering front, everything you could possibly imagine is going to be offered on Saturday. And like we said, there are races prior to the championship races. So in all, we have 12 races on Saturday, November 1st. So lots of pick 5 opportunities. And you're going to have that Breeders' Cup, the BCBC Breeders' Cup Challenge for the players, and that will come down to the wire as it usually does, and will come down to the Maker's Mark Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf. Wow. I could never do this without you. I hope I helped somehow. But, you know, each year we talk, the Breeders' Cup, although we come back with this renewal, it's never the same. There's a different storyline. Even when you come back to the same venue, and this will be back-to-back years at Del Mar, this has storylines that are different in all 14 races. And that Breeders' Cup Classic, like you said, we're going to remember for years to come.
Yeah, I think certainly the leading classic, or the leading storyline, is the Breeders' Cup Classic. Rebels Romance, a huge storyline. Some young owners with horses involved in the Breeders' Cup. You know, growing the game certainly will be a big storyline this year. Todd, the buildup is almost as exciting as the actual event. We've been counting down to this for days, weeks, months. I'm so excited for the 14 horses and all of the people that surround them to get that moment and to be able to celebrate in the Breeders' Cup Winner's Circle.
This was the first big moment leading up to the Breeders' Cup World Thoroughbred Championships. We've got you covered here on FanDuel TV, and wherever there is breaking news, you will find it here with all our programs. And one of our most popular programs, Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup, will be this Friday, and run consecutively through Thursday. That's 7 a.m. Pacific time, 10 a.m. Eastern time. Don't forget about the Breeders' Cup Draw Show. That'll be Monday, October 27th. Del Mar, opening day. They've got their Bing Crosby season Thursday, October 30th, and then the 2 championship races Friday, Saturday. Don't forget the Breeders' Cup Players Show. Christine and I will be back for that on Friday, October 31st. Thanks for watching the Breeders' Cup Pre-Entry Show on FanDuel TV.